On an ordinary May morning, Alex Morgan found something extraordinary. A locked gate blocking the only entrance to his land. The sun had barely climbed above the low coastal hills, gilding the world in a soft gold that promised a warm day ahead. A salty breeze rolled in from the Pacific, brushing against the old eucalyptus trees lining the narrow gravel road that led to Alex's 5-acre property. He paused at the sight before him, coffee thermos still warm in his hand. Across his driveway stood a heavy steel gate gleaming under the morning light, freshly installed overnight, without his knowledge. Stenciled neatly in white block letters across its face were the words, "Property of Oak Ridge, HOA." Alex's heart didn't race, his palms didn't sweat. He simply stared, his mind already shifting gears, the familiar voice in his head reminding him, "Prepare for trouble before it prepares for you." Slowly, methodically, he set down the thermos on the hood of his dusty truck and began documenting everything, the gate, the padlock, even the subtle wheel tracks still visible in the soft gravel nearby. Badge numbers, time. Weather. Nothing was too small to note. He tried the lock, confirming what he already suspected. Solid, heavy-duty chain looped through thick, welded eyelets. Whoever had done this intended to send a message a few houses down, Mrs. Cranston's curtains fluttered, then stilled. Alex caught the faintest glimpse of someone retreating deeper into the house. He knew better than to expect help from neighbors when the HOA was involved. They played their politics like a Sunday poker game, bluffing, folding, and always watching the pot. Without hesitating, Alex dialed the non-emergency sheriff's number. Officer Grant showed up 20 minutes later in a dust-streaked cruiser, tipping his hat back with a thumb as he assessed the situation. "Property disputes," Grant said, scratching his chin and shifting his weight in the gravel. "Messy business, Mr. Morgan. Probably best you sort it out with your HOA, civil matter, you understand. But this is my property," Alex countered, voice calm but firm. "I'm not under HOA jurisdiction." Grant sighed, handing Alex a card with the case number scribbled hastily across the back. "Take it up with a lawyer. I'll file a report, but unless you've got proof they installed it illegally, not much we can do right now." Watching Grant drive away, Alex tucked the card into his shirt pocket and knelt to snap more photos, angles, shadows, everything. Preparation wasn't just a mindset. It was survival. Deciding that breakfast was still salvageable, Alex drove the long way around the perimeter, bouncing down rutted side roads until he reached Sonny's Grill. The little diner sat just off Main Street, a squat building with a peeling blue awning and a hand-painted sign boasting the best coffee, this side of 1950. Inside, the smell of frying bacon and fresh cinnamon rolls wrapped around him like an old blanket. Marge, the waitress with silver hair teased high and an apron embroidered with sunflowers, waved him over. "Morning hone," she said, pouring his coffee without asking. "You're looking more serious than a preacher at a poker table." Alex managed a small smile. "Got a bit of a situation back home. Looks like Oak Ridge HOA decided to gift me a gate. Didn't even send a card." Marge clucked her tongue, sliding him a plate piled with scrambled eggs and sourdough toast. "Those HOA types think they run the whole county best not to let 'em push you around. Folks around here respect a man who stands his ground." They chatted lightly about the upcoming county fair, rumors of a new pie-baking contest, champions stirring the local gossip pot while Alex tucked away mental notes about the atmosphere. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparedness. When the bill came, he tipped Marge 25% as always. It wasn't just gratitude, it was community small gestures that built quiet alliances stronger than any HOA mandate back home. The morning sun had climbed higher, heat shimmering over the gravel road. Seagulls wheeled lazily overhead, their cries slicing through the otherwise heavy silence. Alex parked his truck facing the gate and stepped out slowly. Reaching behind the driver's seat, he pulled out a small black object the size of a deck of cards, a hidden camera encased in a rock-shaped housing. Carefully, casually, he placed it near the base of the driveway's entrance, angling it to capture anyone approaching or tampering with the gate. The breeze carried the faint scent of ocean salt, grounding him. He wiped his hands on his jeans and leaned casually against the hood of his truck, pretending to fiddle with his phone. Out of the corner of his eye, movement caught his attention. A black sedan had pulled up across the road, engine idling, windows tinted too dark to be legal. Alex's gaze sharpened. Someone was watching him too. The best offense sometimes starts with pretending you have no defense. The late morning sun poured over Alex's property in thick golden light, warming the gravel underfoot and pulling the scent of fresh-cut grass into the breeze. From where he stood just beyond the heavy new gate, the world seemed almost deceptively peaceful. A coastal hush broken only by the distant screech of gulls and the soft mechanical whir of his hidden cameras doing their quiet work. Inside his workshop, a battered shed with a slanted roof and peeling white paint. Alex hunched over a small table cluttered with monitors. The grainy black and white feeds flickered, one camera concealed in a mailbox, another in a decorative boulder. He watched as HOA security vehicles prowled past the locked entrance, pausing longer than necessary, their occupants pretending to check maps or fumble with phones. Olivia's voice echoed in his mind as if she were standing right beside him. "You plan security systems like you're planning to fight a war." She hadn't meant it as an insult. It was a statement of fact, one Alex took as a compliment. He dialed her number, tapping his fingers against the metal table while the call connected. "You sound caffeinated," Olivia said by way of greeting, dry amusement threading her voice. "A little bit." Alex admitted, taking a sip from the ceramic mug he'd brought back from Sonny's grill that morning. "The HOA's getting bolder. Got 2 security cruisers circling today. Good. Let them get comfortable." Olivia's voice sharpened slightly. "But remember, Alex, patience, document. Don't engage. They want you to lose your temper. Don't give them that satisfaction." Alex nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I'm not planning to give them anything, except maybe rope to hang themselves with." After they hung up, he set the phone down and turned to the cluttered shelves lining the back wall of the shed. Among the mismatched jars of nails and rolls of fraying wire, a dusty canvas tube caught his eye. Unrolling it revealed old survey maps, thick yellowed paper smelling faintly of mildew and time. His fingers traced the property lines, the faded ink showing where the Oak Ridge development had stopped, and his 5 acres of scrubby paradise began. But what snagged his attention wasn't his land. It was a faint, broken line, barely visible, running along the edge of his property, something not marked on the newer maps he'd reviewed during purchase. A right-of-way public access, forgotten by almost everyone except perhaps the old surveyors who'd originally drawn it decades ago. Curiosity prickling, Alex grabbed his gloves and headed outside. The May sun pressed against his back as he moved along the tangled edge of his property. Hummingbirds zipped from wild orange trumpet vines to the rusting remains of a barbed wire fence, indifferent to his quiet intrusion. At first, the side trail looked like nothing more than an overgrown mess, thickets of blackberry bramble and waist-high grass. But Alex was methodical. Step by step, he pushed deeper, scanning for any sign of old roadbeds or utility markers. The scent of crushed sage and wild fennel rose around him as he cleared a patch with his boot. Then he saw it, a metal survey marker almost completely swallowed by soil and creeping vines. He knelt, brushing dirt aside with his hands, revealing a tarnished plaque bolted into a chunk of concrete, its inscription barely legible but unmistakable: Public Right-of-Way, County Maintained, 1952. Alex leaned back on his heels, heart steady breathing in the loamy, sun-warmed air. The Oak Ridge HOA might have blocked the obvious entrance, but they hadn't counted on history itself, offering him a second door. As he rose, brushing his jeans off, the gentle whir of wings caught his ear. Overhead hummingbirds darted and weaved like living emeralds under the blue California sky, their presence unnoticed by those too busy erecting gates to see what truly endured. By the time he returned to the main trail, sweat soaked the back of his shirt, and he was grinning, a rare expression for him these days. He didn't rush. Instead, he drove slowly back toward Sonny's grill, where familiar faces waited and the coffee flowed as endlessly as the local gossip. The diner door chimed as he entered, the coolness inside a welcome balm against the growing afternoon heat. Marge spotted him and waved from behind the counter, already reaching for the coffee pot. "Refills on me, hon," she called, laughter in her voice. "You look like you wrestled a mountain and won." He slid into his usual booth, nodding in thanks as she filled his mug to the brim. Around him, the quiet buzz of conversation rippled, talk of garden club meetings. A neighbor's new puppy whispers about Oak Ridge's newest power plays. Alex sipped his coffee, savoring the bitterness. The rules of small towns hadn't changed. Everyone noticed everything, and nothing stayed hidden forever. When he finished, he left a crisp tip under his plate, enough for Marge to wink approvingly at him as he passed by. The late afternoon sun was sliding westward, painting long shadows across the dusty roads when Alex finally parked in front of his shed again. He took out his phone, the screen smudged with fingerprints and a thin film of dust from the field. Fingers steady, he typed the message, "Found something, they won't see this coming," and he hit send. Some invitations are really veiled threats dressed in good manners. The Oak Ridge clubhouse sat like a proud old matron at the end of a circular driveway, all manicured lawns and gleaming windows, its polished brass fixtures catching the late May sun in brilliant flashes. Inside, the air was a careful cocktail of lemon polish and conditioned chill, the sort that smoothed wrinkles from silk blouses and kept pearls comfortably cool against pale skin. Alex Morgan pulled open the heavy oak doors, feeling them resist slightly as if reluctant to admit him. A soft, classical piano piece played from hidden speakers, unobtrusive but persistent, the notes lingering like expensive perfume. He stepped inside his boots, clicking faintly against the polished mahogany floor, and was greeted almost immediately by a smiling figure in a cream-colored skirt suit. Victoria Reynolds approached with the grace of someone who expected others to part before her. Early 60s hair coiffed into an immaculate silver wave pearl strung around her neck with the casual confidence of old money. Her smile was wide and welcoming, her eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Mr. Morgan," she said, voice honeyed and practiced. "Thank you so much for joining us on such short notice. We do value open dialogue here at Oak Ridge." Alex offered a nod, careful to keep his expression neutral. His mentor's voice murmured from the depths of memory. "When people invite you kindly into their traps, always bring your own escape route." Behind Victoria, Harold Mitchell materialized, a tall, stooped man in a navy suit, too heavy for the season, his tie slightly askew. His handshake was limp, and his smile didn't quite reach his watery blue eyes. "Harold Mitchell," he said unnecessarily, "board counsel for Oak Ridge." From a desk nearby, Jennifer Lee, mid-40s, sharp-featured and impeccably dressed, rose to offer a polite nod. Her smile was tighter, less polished, and when their eyes met, Alex saw a flicker of something else. Hesitation, maybe even discomfort. Victoria gestured grandly toward a small conference table set beneath an enormous oil painting of smiling past HOA presidents, their benevolent gazes fixed eternally upon the room. A pitcher of chilled lemon water sat in the center, sweating delicately in the controlled air. "Please," Victoria said, indicating a chair opposite her. "Let's sit and discuss your situation." Alex obliged, sinking into the upholstered seat and setting his phone carefully on the table screen down while a tiny recording device hidden in his jacket silently came to life. Victoria folded her hands neatly atop a leather folio and launched into a speech so polished it might have been rehearsed in front of a mirror. She spoke of community standards, of property value preservation, of ensuring a harmonious neighborhood aesthetic. The gate, she assured him, was merely a protective measure. A courtesy, really. A shield against the risks of unregulated development. Harold slid a folder across the table. Inside were aerial photos and survey documents, some official, some conspicuously lacking proper county stamps. "Our updated surveys show that the access road bisecting your property has always been part of Oak Ridge's protected common areas," Harold said, voice dry as paper. "We're simply formalizing long-standing boundaries." Alex flipped through the papers without comment. His face remained passive, but inwardly he catalogued every lie, every misrepresentation. The surveys were fabricated amateurishly at that little details didn't match public records he had already pulled himself. Victoria leaned in slightly, the scent of her expensive perfume barely masking the tang of the lemon polish hanging in the air. "We understand this situation may be frustrating," she said, "and we'd like to offer a solution that benefits everyone." From her folio, she withdrew a crisp envelope and placed it before him, tapping it once with a manicured finger. "An offer to purchase your property at a premium, mind you, so you can avoid any unpleasantness moving forward." Alex considered the envelope but didn't reach for it. "You're very generous," he said mildly, "offering to buy land you claim already belongs to your community." Victoria's smile never faltered. "We believe in resolving disputes amicably, Mr. Morgan. Before they escalate." Jennifer shifted in her chair, her discomfort palpable now. Alex caught her glance, quick, uncertain, before she dropped her eyes to the table. The classical music swelled slightly, a waltz slipping into a minor key. Beyond the wide windows, the eucalyptus trees swayed gently in the sea breeze, their leaves whispering secrets too old for the polished artifice inside. Alex rose slowly. The chair scraping softly against the floor, he picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "I appreciate your time," he said, keeping his voice even. "But I believe I'll be staying put." Victoria's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "We do hope you'll make the right choice, while you still can. The things people try hardest to bury usually have a way of resurfacing." The early June afternoon drifted in cool and clean from the coast, the salty air weaving through the dry inland hills, carrying with it the heavy, familiar scent of eucalyptus. The air outside the San Diego County Records Office was fresh, almost sweet, but inside the place smelled of old paper-stale coffee and resignation. Alex Morgan pushed through the glass door with a quiet determination, his sister Rachel close behind. The records office was a squat, aging building with humming fluorescent lights and shelves packed tight with worn binders and curling blueprints. A ceiling fan rotated lazily overhead, stirring the scent of dust, but doing little to combat the warmth trapped within. Rachel wrinkled her nose and whispered, "Smells like a library. Had a fight with a junkyard and lost." Alex smirked, but said nothing. His eyes scanned the cluttered room before settling on the front desk, where a balding clerk in a brown cardigan was pretending to be deeply engrossed in a Sudoku puzzle. Approaching the desk, Alex cleared his throat. "Excuse me, we're looking for property surveys, San Diego County parcels near Oak Ridge Development Historical Records, preferably older than the 1980s. The clerk barely glanced up, tapping a chewed pen against his paper. "Most of that's been digitized. If it's not online, it's probably been archived. It'll take a while." Rachel leaned in, flashing her press badge with a quick flick of her wrist. "We're on a deadline. Any help you can offer would be greatly appreciated." The clerk sighed like a man burdened beyond endurance by the world's unreasonable demands, then shuffled off behind a partition. A full 10 minutes later, he returned with a battered cardboard box, slamming it down on the counter with more force than necessary. "Knock yourselves out," he muttered. Turning back to his puzzle, Alex and Rachel hauled the box over to a battered metal table and dug in. Layer after layer of brittle paper, smudged microfiche, and rolled maps filled the crate. They worked in silence for a while, interrupted only by the occasional grunt of frustration, when another dead end appeared. Rachel finally nudged Alex, a triumphant glint in her eye. "Here, look." She unrolled a parchment map, so old it crackled when flattened, revealing a detailed survey from the early 1950s. Near the southern edge of Oak Ridge's plotted lots, a faint, almost forgotten trail cut across a corner labeled in faded ink, "Public right-of-way maintained by county jurisdiction." Alex leaned closer, tracing the line with his fingertip. "They paved over history without checking the foundations." Rachel grinned. "Let's find someone who remembers when this wasn't just a developer's fantasy." The solution came easier than expected. Over coffee at Sonny's Grill. Rachel casually dropped George Coleman's name into conversation with Marge, who raised her eyebrows knowingly. "Old George," she said, pouring Alex another refill. Lives up by the bluff. Used to be on the city council before he got sick of all the nonsense. He'll remember, and don't trust anyone who polishes a fence too much, hon," she added with a wink. "A shiny fence hides a lot of rust." Within an hour, they were knocking on the peeling green door of a modest stucco house overlooking the valley. George answered slowly, leaning on a cane. His thin frame stooped, but his eyes sharp as flint under bushy gray brows. Rachel made introductions, mentioning Marge's recommendation and their interest in the old public access roads. Something in George's posture shifted suspicion, melting into cautious curiosity. Inside, the air was thick with the smells of lemon oil and tobacco, and the walls were lined with bookshelves sagging under the weight of thick city planning volumes. Over mugs of weak coffee, George shuffled to a battered desk and pulled out a stack of yellowing maps. His hands trembled slightly, but when he spoke his voice was steady. "They built Oak Ridge too fast," he said. "Cut corners, paid more attention to politics than property lines. That right-of-way, it was never officially abandoned. Fell out of use, that's all. Technically, it's still public access." Rachel, quick and efficient, set her phone discreetly to record, catching every word as George tapped the map for emphasis. Alex felt the knot of tension he'd carried for weeks begin to loosen. Here was proof from someone who had been there that Oak Ridge's claims were smoke and mirrors. As George continued, his voice softened, carrying a weight of bittersweet nostalgia. "Used to be," he said, staring out his window at the fading light. "Neighbors knew each other, looked after each other, didn't need gates and fences to feel safe. Progress," he added the word thick with irony, "just made it easier to forget what mattered." They spent another hour gathering statements and copies of George's old documents before thanking him and heading back toward town. As Alex drove, the sun dipped lower, casting the hills in molten hues of orange and crimson. Rachel glanced over, noting the rare satisfaction on her brother's face. "Feeling optimistic?" she teased. Alex didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached over and plucked the map from the passenger seat. Studying the faint lines drawn across a landscape that the HOA had mistakenly believed they controlled, "They've built their kingdom on sand." He muttered a quiet promise against the rumbling hum of the road beneath their tires. When an enemy is eager to destroy you, sometimes all you have to do is stand still and let them. The first real heat of June settled into the hills like a heavy wool blanket. Days stretched out long and drowsy, and the nights, once cool and bracing, now only softened to a lukewarm hum under the quilt of a star-smeared sky. The inland breeze carried the dry tang of eucalyptus and dust, slipping along the gravel drive and rustling the tall grass at the edges of Alex Morgan's property. Beneath the illusion of calm, Alex worked. Silent, steady, preparing the battlefield. Under the pretense of clearing brush, he moved at night, hauling branches away from the half-forgotten access road hidden by years of neglect. His truck headlights stayed off. His boots trod carefully. Every inch of cleared ground meant one step closer to regaining full, unfettered access to his land, without Oak Ridge's heavy hand clamping down. Meanwhile, his primary front, the decoy gate blocking the main entrance, bristled quietly with surveillance, miniature cameras tucked into fence posts, motion sensors disguised as rocks, hidden microphones placed where whispered threats could be caught. Olivia's advice circled in his mind. Document everything. The law loves a clear paper trail. The HOA's private security patrols became a daily intrusion. A white SUV with the Oak Ridge crest etched on its door would roll past in slow sweeps, sometimes stopping just long enough for the driver to pretend to check his radio. Other times, two men. Brian Cooper among them, thick-necked and perpetually frowning, would park across the road and simply sit windows down watching Alex's every move with open suspicion. They never touched him. Not directly, but their presence was a nudge, a flex of intimidation without fingerprints. Alex ignored them, photographed them, logged every encounter. The notice arrived 3 days after he cleared the last stubborn blackberry thicket from the hidden path. A crisp, official-looking letter slipped under the fake gate during the night. Notice of community standards violation. The list was laughable. Unauthorized landscaping, non-compliant fencing, visual blight charges, that even if Alex had been under Oak Ridge's jurisdiction, which he wasn't, would have been baseless. He filed the notice with the others in a neat folder marked Evidence. Later that same afternoon, Alex caught movement on one of the camera feeds. Brian and two younger security officers were trespassing, stepping boldly across the gate line and poking around Alex's construction equipment. They didn't damage much, just loosened a few tarps and shifted stakes marking out the house's foundation. Petty vandalism harassment with plausible deniability. Alex sat in his shed sipping lukewarm coffee from Sonny's grill, watching them on his laptop monitor. Every movement caught from 3 angles. Every hushed word picked up by tiny microphones hidden inside the gate's fake rocks. When they finally wandered off, Alex didn't confront them. He didn't even step outside. He simply picked up his phone and called Detective Torres, voice calm, as if discussing tomorrow's weather. "Got some more footage for you," he said. "Trespassing, minor property damage. Want me to upload it, or you want a physical copy too?" Torres, ever the professional, chuckled dryly on the other end. "Both? Keep the originals safe. This is building nicely." Later that night, as the last gold light drained from the sky and the first stars blinked into view, Alex walked the perimeter of his land. He moved slowly, savoring the quiet hum of crickets and the low, steady pulse of the ocean just over the hills. His hidden entrance was almost complete now, another few nights, and he could move freely without brushing against Oak Ridge's fabricated chains. At Sonny's the next morning over scrambled eggs and a second helping of black coffee, the gossip flowed as easily as the syrup over pancakes. "You hear they got that new security fella at Oak Ridge patrolling like he's guarding Fort Knox?" Marge said, laughing as she refilled Alex's mug. "Next thing you know, they'll be setting up checkpoints and asking for passports." The regulars at the counter chuckled, head shaking. But the undercurrent was clear. Oak Ridge was pushing its luck, and the town was noticing back home. Alex set about tightening the snare. Victoria's next move came swiftly and predictably. Another act of overreach she must have believed. Brilliant mid-morning, a small crew of hired hands rolled up with drills and fresh metal hardware. Victoria herself, in a bright lavender suit and designer sunglasses, oversaw the installation of an even heavier chain and a thick new padlock across the main gate. She waved a folder through the air like a priest anointing a relic. More paperwork, undoubtedly riddled with false claims of ownership. Brian Cooper stood stiffly by the trucks, hands clasped behind his back like a soldier waiting orders. Alex, standing far enough away to seem uninvolved, watched through narrowed eyes, the camera embedded in the mailbox capturing every smug smile. Every barked instruction, Victoria handed the stack of papers directly to Brian. Not a courier, not a hired hand. Victoria herself caught in full view, giving direct orders to fortify an illegal structure on land she did not own. Alex smiled slightly, a rare thing these days as he watched the live feed on his phone. They had just handed him the last piece he needed on HD video, no less, and they didn't even realize it. Some fortresses collapse with a bang, others with a scream. The July sun hammered down mercilessly, turning the asphalt outside the Oak Ridge gate into a shimmering, restless mirror. Heat waves danced along the gravel shoulders of the road and the heavy metal gate. Once the proud barrier of the HOA's dominion now sagged slightly on its hinges like a relic of a battle already lost. Alex Morgan stood just beyond the property line, arms loosely crossed, a baseball cap pulled low over his brow to shield against the glare. Around him, a quiet, charged hum filled the air. Not from cicadas or the usual summer chatter, but from news vans parked strategically along the curb, their satellite dishes aimed skyward like steel sunflowers. Reporters wiped sweat from their foreheads. Microphones, ready lenses trained on the unfolding theater. Jennifer Lee's leak had cracked the dam wide open, HOA internal emails, financial misappropriations, Backdoor deals, all of it bundled neatly into packets sent to local news outlets. And the sheriff's department alike. Detective Torres moved quickly, issuing formal charges: conspiracy document tampering, trespassing. Now Oak Ridge wasn't just gossip fodder for Sonny's grill. It was headline news. From the corner of his eye, Alex saw the black Mercedes screech to a halt near the gate. Dust billowed behind it like smoke from a battlefield. The driver's side door flung open with enough force to rattle the hinges, and Victoria Reynolds emerged in a whirl of lavender silk and unfiltered rage. Her hair, normally coiffed into a helmet of careful control, was beginning to fray at the edges. The oppressive heat wilted even the fiercest postures, and Victoria looked less like a queen and more like someone dragged reluctantly into the light. She stormed across the cracked asphalt heels, clacking with ferocious intent. "You!" she shrieked, finger jabbing at Alex. "You treacherous little man, you've destroyed everything we built." Alex said nothing. He didn't have to. Cameras captured every twitch, every red flush blooming on her cheeks. The sound engineers probably wouldn't even have to adjust the volume. Brian Cooper hovered a few paces behind her, looking as though he'd rather be anywhere else. Harold Mitchell, tie darkened with sweat, trailed after them, his face drawn tight with panic. Victoria rounded on Brian, voice slicing through the humid air. "Tear it down. Tear it all down. Rip out the gate. Bulldoze his foundation. I don't care what it takes." Brian stiffened. His jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, he shook his head slowly, glancing uneasily at the reporters clustered just beyond the parked cars. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, voice low but firm, "I can't authorize that. We'll be liable. Personal liability." Victoria's face twisted into a mask of rage. She spun to Harold, grabbing his sleeve. "Do something," she hissed. "You're the lawyer." Harold's hands fluttered uselessly before he dropped them in defeat. "Victoria," he said, voice barely audible, "you need to stop. Right now." The crowd smelled blood. Microphones were thrust forward, cameras inched closer. Victoria pivoted, searching for a scapegoat, and found Jennifer standing quietly off to one side, arms folded across her chest, head held high. "You," Victoria spat, "you, Judas. After everything we did for you, you side with him." Jennifer didn't flinch. If anything, her stance grew taller. "You did it to yourself," she said simply. It was too much. The anger that had sustained Victoria for so long consumed her entirely now. She ranted, pointing fingers wildly at Harold, at Jennifer, even at the assembled neighbors watching in horrified fascination from across the street. She called them cowards, traitors, ingrates. Her voice cracked high and raw. Through it all, Alex remained still, letting the storm pass around him. Each word she flung, becoming another brick torn from the crumbling wall she had once ruled from. The crescendo broke when a new car rolled up quietly to the curb, a sleek, unassuming sedan. From it stepped Thomas Reynolds, tall, composed, his face grave. Victoria faltered when she saw him, some dim spark of self-awareness flickering behind her fury. Thomas approached, cutting through the oppressive heat like a blade, and stopped a few feet from his mother. His voice was calm, firm, and carried farther than any of Victoria's shrieks. "It's over," he said. And with that, the final stone tumbled from the fortress. Some victories aren't celebrated with fireworks, just a quiet sigh of relief. The courtroom was cool and solemn, the air humming faintly with the mechanical churn of the overhead fans. Late July sunlight spilled in through the high windows, striping the tiled floor in long, tired rectangles. Alex Morgan sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, hands folded loosely in his lap while the judge finished reading the final section of the ruling. Victoria Reynolds wasn't there to hear it. She'd disappeared from public view weeks earlier, her fall from grace complete and merciless. The Oak Ridge HOA board sat in a miserable tight-knot formation, Harold Mitchell among them avoiding eye contact with anyone. Jennifer Lee, once the reluctant secretary, stood with her arms loosely crossed, a quiet pillar of resolve. The words landed with the weight of gavel strikes, though none were needed yet. The HOA leadership was found guilty of misconduct, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Victoria Reynolds was barred from holding any HOA-related office for life. Damages were awarded enough to cover Alex's legal fees, the cost of the destroyed equipment, and then some. The illegal gate, already removed 2 days prior, was ordered stricken from the county's records. It was as if it had never existed at all. Alex caught a glimpse of Thomas Reynolds at the back of the room, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his jaw tight but his shoulders slumped in something resembling relief. Thomas had submitted a letter of apology to the court, quietly acknowledging his mother's wrongs, and Clearwater Development had pulled their project altogether, unwilling to weather the public backlash. As the judge wrapped up the proceedings and the crowd began to stir, Olivia Bennett leaned in, her voice low but warm. "Freedom," she said, "hard-earned, well-deserved." Alex nodded once, grateful beyond words. Outside, the heat had broken. A soft inland breeze carried the scent of the ocean, wrapping the streets in the first hints of evening's coolness. The news vans had packed up and gone, their appetite for scandal sated. The world moved on. Sonny's grill buzzed with life as Alex passed by on the way home. Through the open windows he caught glimpses of Marge ferrying plates of burgers and fries, a radio somewhere crooning an old Patsy Cline tune. Kids pedaled their bikes lazily down the dusty lanes, shouting and laughing, the slow, timeless rhythm of small-town summer fully restored. At his property, the setting sun painted the world in colors too rich for any photograph to capture molten gold spilling into deep rose and violet, the Pacific Ocean beyond, shimmering like a promise fulfilled. Alex climbed onto the rough foundation slab where his house would soon stand. The concrete was still cool from the long shadow cast by a nearby oak tree, the only one he had insisted on keeping when clearing the land. He sat down cross-legged, elbows resting on his knees, a battered ceramic mug from Sonny's clutched between his hands. The coffee inside had gone cold, but he didn't care. He raised it slightly toward the horizon in a silent toast. The sunset was uninterrupted. No fences, no gates, no threats. Just open sky and rolling waves and the soft creak of a screen door from a neighbor's house somewhere down the road. Footsteps crunched across the gravel, and he turned to see Marge approaching, carrying a fresh pie wrapped in a checkered cloth. "Thought you might like a little something sweet to go with that stubborn victory of yours?" she called. Grinning, Alex chuckled, standing to meet her halfway. "Told you good things come to stubborn men," Marge said, handing over the pie with a wink before turning back toward town. Her figure shrinking against the darkening sky, Alex watched her go, then turned back to the ocean, the cool breeze stirring his hair, the world wide open before him. For the first time in a long while, he let himself breathe deep and easy. The fight was over, and he was still standing. The quiet evening air settled over Alex's land, carrying the smell of grilled burgers and the soft laughter of children racing bicycles down dusty lanes. In the end, it wasn't grand speeches or courtroom fireworks that won the day, but patience, truth, and the slow, steady weight of a community refusing to bow. When rules are wielded with honesty, neighborhoods thrive. When they're twisted for power, they crumble like sandcastles before an incoming tide. Perhaps it's never too late to stand firm beside our neighbors and protect the places we call home. Somewhere beyond the horizon, another sunset waited, unbroken, untamed, and free.